You're listening to Permission to Shine, the podcast. Stories of overcoming obstacles and finding self-empowerment with Sherisse Bisram, Inner Power Activation Leader. The Oxford Dictionary describes permission as the action of officially allowing someone to do a particular thing, consent, authorization. What if you were that someone and you gave yourself the permission to be everything you wanted to be and more? No more playing small and accepting less than. You are worthy of the life of your dreams, regardless of what it is that you've been through. And honestly, it's exactly what you've been through that has shaped you into the version of yourself that you are now. Like a diamond, you've endured so much, but instead of breaking, you have become stronger and brighter. And if that's not a reason to shine, then I don't know what is. And if nature can do it, then why the hell can't you? You are brave, you are strong, you are powerful, and you are enough. Hear my call and give yourself the permission to shine, because you don't realise how many people are inspired by your light. Hi everyone, this is episode 34 and I'm so excited to have my guest on today because we were meant to record a couple of weeks ago, then she got COVID and it's just been like a drama, but obviously you're happy, you're healthy, and it's so lovely to have you here. It's the lovely Kate Blackford.
Hello, it's lovely to be here. Yes, I would rather have been here a couple of weeks ago than in bed with COVID, if I'm honest, but you know, at least we made it happen. So
Absolutely. No, I appreciate that. And obviously the fact that you're, like I said, happy and healthy is the most important thing. But also, introduce yourself. Tell us what you do, who you are.
yeah, so Kate Blackford, I am a therapist, coach, and corporate wellbeing consultant. So I do a range of different things because of my background, to be honest. I did a lot of work in consultancy in the past, and then a few years ago I went and retrained as a therapist and coach, and I kind of do a blend of them now because I think often, you know, work is a big part of our lives, and if we can not only help people with their therapeutic or coaching needs, their life aspirations, we can also help organizations to better understand people and support their well-being for happy, healthy employees. So
Absolutely. That's so important as well, because I think so many corporate companies and businesses are understanding that now, aren't they? That people are actually the core of their whole business. So it's so important that we're putting their needs first, because this kind of, I always talk about this like patriarchal way of what we've kind of lived in for so long is kind of crumbling, isn't it? Almost like people are realizing that just doesn't work for people. You know, even the 4-day week now is more proactive and productive to the company than it has been. So really, really incredible work that you do. And I'll just say to the audience that me and Kate actually met because we were both speakers at an event last month, I think it was, and it was just so amazing. Like for women, it was about women empowerment and self-care, the importance of self-care. And Kate did an amazing talk, really connecting everything she does as well with the menopause, which was just really mind-blowing, I think, because I feel like I've always understood it to a loose way, you know, like kind of saw the connections, but I've never really dived in too far. But the way that you were able to explain it and articulate it was really profound, and I was actually like, wow, there's so many layers to menopause, and it's important that we start talking about it, really, isn't it?
oh, absolutely. I'm kind of on a bit of a one-woman mission to stimulate the conversation, get rid of some of the taboos, which is one of the things we talked about when I was with you at the event. Kind of get rid of some of these taboos about talking about it. You know, it's this secret thing that we mustn't say anything about. And actually, do you know what? This isn't just a flash in the pan. This is a life phase that everyone will go to more or less of a degree for between 7 and 15 years of her life. So it's not really a flash in the pan. It needs to be understood. It needs to be talked about. And women as well not only need to understand the range of symptoms that they can experience and the impact it can have, and learn how to self-advocate so they get what they need. But also, you know, we need men in the conversation. If you're living with someone who's perimenopausal, that can be confusing for you. If you're working with people or have a team with women in who are at that age, then as a leader, you have to understand this stuff to be able to support your staff and get the best out of them.
Yeah, 100%. Like I'm literally waving that flag with you. I feel like even that periods is something that people get weirded out, don't they, about speaking about. Like I remember having just the box of like sanitary products in my bathroom as I started to go through puberty, and my dad was like mortified. He was like, put that box away. Whereas my stepdad now is like, oh, do you need me to go and get you them? Should I just go and get them? And then he'll go and get whatever product I need, and he'll come back with chocolate as well. And I'm like, there you go. So it's two different types of people, isn't there? The way that you kind of see and understand it. Not that one's wrong or right, but well, I guess it kind of is wrong or right, to be honest, because it is about, you know, facilitating that space for the person that you love, if you are obviously on the other side of that. But equally, for us as women to just own that that's a really big part of who we are. And as you said, to be able to self-advocate, I think that's the greatest gift you could give anyone, isn't it, really, to be able to take back their power and own every part of them. And I think it's so wonderful that you're doing that. And yeah, I'll be sharing all of this stuff always, because I think it's so important. But tell us, before we go into all this even more so, because I've got so many questions, tell us about you and your life and how you ended up in the role that you're in now. I mean, I obviously know about it because you spoke about it at the speech, but I feel like it's a really lovely story that the audience would really love to hear.
Yeah. Well, it took me a while to get here. I did a lot of jobs that weren't really quite me along the way, for various reasons, I think. And so I guess it started at the age of 5. I think I declared I was going to go to university. Nobody in my direct family had gone to university, so I was the first. And I think I was about 8 years old when I decided that I was going to study psychology. And I remember for my birthday, I think that the following year, my mum buying me a copy of a psychology book by a famous psychologist called Zimbardo, and just being absolutely thrilled with this book. I kept it for years and years and years. But I had always kind of struggled. I was called quite sensitive. And I was quite sensitive and lacking confidence, lacking self-worth. And I was bright, but didn't have the faith in myself. And as I grew up, I developed issues with food, which developed into full-blown anorexia when I went to university. And in the end, actually, I did my first year and then had to take a year out just to get myself in a better place, because I'd got in a bit of a mess with anorexia and then periods of bulimia in with it, just to mix it up a bit. And had to take a year out and then go back and do my degree. So, I'd always had these kind of connections with the mind and wanting to understand it and wanting to kind of, I guess, figure out myself at that stage. It wasn't so much about other people. I think it was more a driver of understanding me and who I was and why I operated the way I did. And I got well and I got to a healthy weight. But I never really got over a lot of the sort of the side symptoms of it. So I maintained the lowest healthy weight I could to fly under the radar. But I had anxiety, I had periods of panic attacks, I had low mood, I had body dysmorphic disorder, where particularly if I was stressed, I would see myself as bigger than I was. And I kind of carried that with me right up until I was in my mid to late 30s. And at that point, a friend of mine said, I've met this fantastic therapist. I know you struggle, Kate, you should go and talk to her. And one morning I was feeling quite low and I picked up the phone and I made an appointment. And that was kind of the point and I get a bit emotional talking about it, actually. That was kind of the point at which my life started to change. And she was a cognitive hypnotherapist. She is a cognitive hypnotherapist. She does a lot of other things as well. And through working with her, I started to unpick some of what was going on. The body dysmorphic disorder went, the anxiety improved, and the low mood kind of persisted a little bit, but got better along the way. And I found out later there are other reasons for that as well. And after I'd worked with her a bit, I'd kind of gone through various jobs. I could never stick at a job for very long. And I kept thinking it was because I wasn't challenged enough. I'd do it for a bit and I'd be like, right, I'm bored, what's next? And I'd go for a promotion and a promotion and a promotion, and eventually got to a senior leadership role in a large company. And I was like, why am I not happy? what's wrong with me. And I think as women, we do that a lot. We kind of put a lot of stuff on ourselves. There must be something wrong with me, that I've got this fabulous sports car, I've got these wonderful designer clothes, I've got this lovely house, I've got an amazing partner, 2 incredible naughty dogs, and why am I not happy? I should be happy. And kept working kind of intermittently with my therapist, and realized that actually I wasn't doing what I wanted to be doing. I drifted off into the world of kind of corporate consulting, lost track of the psychology element of what I was doing as a therapist, and was doing sort of psychology of risk, safety, well-being. So still dipping my toe in, but it wasn't feeding my soul in the way that I needed it to. And the defining moment, I guess, for me was in 2019, when my boss called me into the office and told me that they were making cuts, and that I would be made redundant. It was quite interesting, because I got made redundant in 2008, and it felt like my world caved in, and it was the worst thing that could possibly happen to me. And this time when he told me, I literally whooped with joy and then cried hysterically because of laughter. I was like, yes, this is amazing. And at that moment, it was my opportunity. And I was like, right, I'd been retraining as a therapist on my weekends. And I was like, right, this is it. This is the point. And it was 1st of October 2019 that I launched Origami Therapy Coaching and Corporate Wellbeing Services. So that's kind of how it came about. I particularly love working with women. You said the word empowerment. That's what it's all about. I have a team that I work with now. My fabulous partner is also trained as a therapist, so he works with me, and 2 fabulous other therapists who work with me as well. And so we work with a whole range of different people now, and a whole range of different concerns, issues, worries, right from trauma through to presentation anxiety, and everything in between. So yeah, it's brilliant. It's the one job that I never get bored of, because you can always learn more. You can pick up different skills, you can learn different therapeutic techniques, you can do different innovative things, and every client is different. So you're always in that logical problem solving. How can I best serve this client? How can I help this client be the best version of themselves? So I love it. I love it.
Oh, I love that. Thank you so much for sharing all of your story. And it was really wonderful. And I think so important as well. I love the cheer for joy as well. That's such a lovely moment, isn't it? Because it was like that release, wasn't it? It's like, I'm free. I can do this. And I think that's so wonderful, because I find a lot of people, especially, well, I would say everyone. I'm going to just say everyone. I feel like this is very generalized, but I think it is that when we are following a narrative that isn't our own, that's when we feel the most repressed. And I think so many people are just doing a 9 to 5 or a job for the sake of it, and not because they love it. And I think that's really where obviously we pave the way for burnout and resentment, but also like that really is the dimming of your light, isn't it? Like that's kind of like how a lot of people say, oh, I lost my spark, and it's because you were doing like not what you wanted for so long that obviously there's no light left, because it's been given away to these things that don't actually serve your soul's purpose. And I think it was really nice to hear on that moment where it was like all of your power came back to you in that moment, and you were like lit up like a firework, like, yes, this is it, this is my time. And I'm so glad that obviously you got to just be in this light, in this space. And there's a couple of other points as well that I wanted to highlight. I understand now through when we think about eating disorders, for me, I feel like it's a control thing, like it's a way of us to gain control. So I just want to we don't have to go too far into this, but I just feel like it's a really interesting way for the audience to understand about how our childhood experiences play a part in why we would want to need to control something else. So I just wondered if you could just kind of just share like a little bit of an overview, without going obviously into too much detail, as to where you think that link is for you.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think for me, very much the eating disorder is the symptom. And often it relates back to, like you say, lack of a perception of lack of control, low self-worth, and feeling like you need to exert control over something in your life. And I think often, you know, we don't always realize how much impact that these sometimes seemingly insignificant events in childhood can have on our self-worth, our self-esteem, who we believe we are. You know, all around us, other people have these ideas about who we are, and they're projected onto us. And I think particularly for women, because there are these ideas about how little girls should behave and what it's appropriate for us to do and present ourselves and how we engage with other people, you know, that can lead to a lot of erosion of self-worth, or even a lack of the nourishment for it to even grow.
Absolutely.
And it creates a whole range of different problems throughout life, right? From eating disorders to people pleasing, not being able to hold healthy boundaries, anxiety, low mood, all kinds of things. And, you know, yes, you get the kind of the traumas that people experience in childhood that and throughout life that can create problems. But there are also these little things that can happen because of how our brain processes when we're young, we kind of learn that it's not okay to be this way, or we have to be this way. And that suppression of self really starts quite early. So there are all these different kind of factors that are playing in. And I think I would say that, you know, just to be clear on that, this isn't a criticism of parents. You know, every single one of us does the best we can with what we've got.
Absolutely.
If we don't know it, we can't understand it. And with the best will in the world, you can never as a parent protect your child from every adverse experience all the time. And if you did, they'd grow up without any resilience, without any, you know, without any spark. And they'd be constantly terrified of something going wrong. So, you know, you've got to get that balance of letting them go out there and be in the world, but also kind of supporting and protecting them. And so I think, you know, with the eating disorders piece, it really is often a symptom of those things. It's that suppression of self, that feeling like even that level of expressing who you are, or even knowing who you are or who you want to be, that loss of control over even that at the most kind of the deepest kind of core level, that then is expressed as this controlling of food and body weight and image.
Yeah, absolutely. No, thank you for elaborating on that as well, because I speak a lot about that, but it's always really nice to have, you know, especially another therapist actually speak about it and just give it a bit more context as well for listeners, because I think especially as women, I feel like naturally we're kind of programmed, should I say, to be conscious of our weight. You know, like I remember growing up and having the Special K advert, and they wanted you to eat like 3 bowls of Special K a day and no meals because they thought that was really good for you. Do you know what I mean? I'm like, even like watching my mum just yo-yo diet a little bit through that time. It was always very apparent that we had to monitor our weight. But even for me, obviously being a dancer as well, I think the moment I started to get into the idea that I had to look a type of way to be a dancer, that was really when my obsession over what I was eating kicked in. And I don't think I ever identified it as an eating disorder before, but I think when I was speaking to Nikki, funny enough, so Nikki's our mutual friend, and I think Nikki is one of the earliest podcast episodes I did, and we were speaking about it. And that in that episode, then I was like, I agree, I definitely had an eating disorder develop in that time, because one, obviously I'd left my family home. I just lost a parent a year before, and my role in my household had always been to protect and to provide, and I wasn't able to do that. So that was the loss of like who I was as a person and my validation for being here, you know. So then I was trying to claw back control for that emotionally, but equally physically I needed to look a type of way to be a dancer. So it's so complex, isn't it, all of these things? And I think for anyone listening thinking, gosh, like this, so everything's so interconnected, but it really is. And I think as humans we're so multifaceted, so you know, to think that there's just like a click and you can just get out of it, so I mean, I don't know if you get this too, but the amount of people that come to me like, I just want to be more confident. I'm like, cool, so tell me about your childhood. And they're like, what? And I'm like, honestly, it's not the surface level. I promise you, it's never the surface level. But yeah, I feel like, you know, there's so much to your story and the reasons to how you got to where you are now. But I would say along your journey to kind of finding this pathway, what were the common themes that, you know, kept repeating in regards to, like you mentioned, obviously the anxiety and things like that? How would that show itself? Would that be debilitating? Was that the kind of roadblocks that you were facing through every sort of growth part of your journey?
Yeah, absolutely. So some of the kind of repeating themes were very much around people pleasing, not having healthy boundaries or often any real boundaries. And that then creates problems because you end up doing too much for everybody else and not looking after yourself. And you end up often at the point where, excuse me, you feel like if you can't, you've committed to something, you've said yes, and you're like, oh, I can't do it, I don't want to do it, it's too much. And then you end up letting people down. So that kind of erodes self-worth as well, because then you think you're a bad person because you haven't done this thing you said you do. So yeah, absolutely. And the self-worth piece was kind of underlying all of it for me. Wanting to be accepted, wanting to be okay, wanting to be popular, I suppose, at school as well, and just all of those things playing into, well, if I do enough for everybody else, they'll like me. And you know, often actually you have the people that see you for who you are and like you, but a lot of people, when you're a people pleaser, will just take advantage of that.
Absolutely.
May or may not be consciously, but it happens. So, you know, it didn't lead to that. And then the problem is that because that's what your brain thinks is the thing you need to do, you then end up trying to do more. Oh, I'm obviously not doing enough, so if I do more, that will make it okay. So I think, you know, they often, these things, they are cyclical, and they are also self-perpetuating. So the more you do it, the more they create more of the problem. And so yeah, absolutely. I mean, periods of intense anxiety, panic attacks, where at one point in my life, every night I went to bed, as soon as I tried to settle down to sleep, panic attack would hit, and I'd literally be on my hands and knees on the floor with my head down, just fighting for breath. And it was just awful. And then low mood came with that, and feeling quite down, and being diagnosed as depressed, and all the stuff that came with that. And feeling stressed as well, because when you're constantly worried and anxious about what everybody else is thinking, that's a lot of pressure, that's a lot of stress. So, and that manifested, you know, the whole mind-body connection, that manifested itself in migraines and in things like, you know, constantly picking up bugs and still trying to work through it all the time. Whereas now, I, with the exception of the COVID, I rarely get ill, and I don't get the migraines nearly as badly or nearly as often as I used to. And that's been a holistic thing. It's been lifestyle, it's been nutrition, it's been, you know, using the tools I learn as a therapist and coach on myself.
Yeah, absolutely.
Constantly kind of keeping on top of those things, those little self-care practices.
100%.
Boundaries. Yeah,
absolutely. No, I resonate so much with everything you said there, and it very much has been kind of a similar thing for me as well. It's funny, isn't it, how we all kind of have themes in our lives that are almost repeated that led us to the work that we do now. It's funny, isn't it? And I think I don't think people would have put me down as a people pleaser because I was so extroverted and opinionated, that I think people would naturally think I wasn't a people pleaser. But I think almost as a result of the way I was, I made more of an effort to be a people pleaser, and then again created the perpetual cycles. But with the panic attacks now, looking back, do you know what the cause of it was, or was it just a combination of everything coming to the surface?
it was a combination. It was a combination of overworking, trying to please everybody, trying to constantly be my best self, always feeling like I wasn't enough, I wasn't good enough, I wasn't somehow right or acceptable in some way. So that kind of overperforming in every area I possibly could to somehow be good enough. And also, you know, at that point in my life, because I was so unhappy, I was using alcohol to help me sleep, to switch off my brain, to help me get to sleep. So that doesn't help, because that increases anxiety, increases low mood. And I was going out when I had a weekend. I wasn't traveling for work. I was going out and, you know, partying a bit too hard with my friends, and thinking that that was the best way to relax, but actually just kind of reinforcing the things that were the problem.
Yeah, and I think as well now that obviously we've just said that straight away, came to my thought was that when you're trying to sleep, that's when you're the most still and you have a chance to feel. And then I guess the feelings become overwhelming and then you feel trapped by your own thoughts, don't you? So almost like that's probably what initiates the panic. It's so I could talk about this for hours, because I just find that the human mind and the body connection is just so profound, isn't it? And, you know, when you know these things, you can't not know them. And I don't know about you, but I find now when I know someone, even for a short period of time, it could be that I have like a, you know, say a conversation with someone for a little while. And then after I walk away, and then I'm thinking about, oh, well, I know why the reason they feel that way is because obviously clearly and I'm like, I need to stop doing that, psychoanalyzing people. And I'm not judging people, it's just my way of like understanding them. I'm like, of course they would feel that way because blah, 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 blah. And I don't know if you have that where it's like my mind just does it, and I'm obviously I shut it off because it's not, I don't need to tell anyone that either if no one asks for my advice. That's definitely something I've learned as my growth journey within this industry kind of has blossomed. But yeah, I just feel like because we can see it, you can't unsee it, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And you do, and again, that's a really good point where the boundaries come in, because I mean, you can get people do these kind of jobs because they're passionate about it. You know, for me, it's not a job, it's kind of part of the fiber of who I am. And so then those boundaries become really, really even more important, because otherwise you do, and you end up either overstepping or helping all these people out when actually, you know, they haven't necessarily asked for you to do it. And
absolutely,
you're not switching off, you're not giving yourself the self-care and the downtime. And so, yeah, it's not only about kind of the boundaries that you set with other people, it's about the boundaries that you set with yourself. And that's really important. I think
absolutely.
It's critical to the whole balanced self-care, mental well-being and physical well-being piece.
100%. That is literally something that I am constantly hounding down. And actually, it's so lovely to have you on, because you're just reiterating everything that I normally say, which is great, because I feel like just to have that reinforcement for everyone to know how important this stuff is. You know, we're not just following some rhetoric and repeating it. This is actually so fundamentally important to really transform your life and give you that autonomy and sovereignty to your life, you know, to have that reclamation of your power. Like, this is all so important. But I guess on that, I mean, I can kind of tell where it was in your story point, but what would you say your really main moment where you gave yourself that permission to shine, to step into who you came here to be?
It was, I think it was in that room with my boss on that day. And it just opened up a whole world of possibility. And don't get me wrong, it hasn't been easy. And there have been a lot of challenges along the way. Starting your own business, working for yourself, it has different challenges to those of being employed. But it was that moment where I kind of thought, I can do this, and this is my opportunity. This is it. It's literally being handed to me on a plate here. And I went straight off and I got hold of a designer to design my brand. And I got my website started building, even while I was still kind of working my notice. And I started to really kind of invest in how I wanted origami to look and feel. And that was when, like you say, that the light came back. And it wasn't only from the kind of the external possibility. It was me. It was like the switch had been switched on, and I went, hey, this is it. This is the moment, and I can do this. And it's been a learning journey since then. Don't get me wrong. I mean, I made loads of boundary mistakes at first. I went through periods of burning myself out and having to kind of really figure out how I worked with things, and making sure I had those switch off points where I wasn't in therapist, coach, consultant mode, and that I was just allowed to be myself. So, you know, there are these challenges, but I think when you have that passion, that inspiration, and you've got to a point where you have enough self-belief that you kind of think, I can do this, that carries you through the tough times.
Yeah, definitely. Well, that's so wonderful. And I think on that as well, just highlighting something you just said there about self-belief, the self-belief comes and it's built in that trusting of yourself, but equally following your passion. I feel like it's something that grows. And again, you said this earlier, and it's something I always say, that to live in this space of empowerment is a daily practice.
Yeah.
You don't just turn it on and it's there forever. It's something you have to continuously work towards. I think all of us, you know, really need to understand that you are formulated, and you know who you are becomes in your habits. And I think that's really kind of what we're saying in all of this, isn't it? Really, you know, like, to be able to combat the people pleasing, you need to have strong boundaries, you know. To be able to really truly believe in yourself, you need to be showing yourself every single day that you are worthy and deserving of what the thing that you want, and you're really good at it. And that's where the belief builds. It's like this continuous thing, which I think is just so important to highlight at that moment, because I don't want the listeners to think, oh right, because you've always loved therapy that you went into doing it and that was it. It's not that at all. It's like a real roller coaster ride, isn't it? And I think especially with therapy, because there's so much emotional connection to, you know, what you do. And like, obviously there's possibilities of you taking that work home and thinking about it. So that's why obviously all of these practices are so important, aren't they? Because if they weren't, you'd be consumed, which I guess that you probably had been at times.
Yeah, absolutely. And, you know, and that's the thing. And I think that's not only an important lesson for us as practitioners, but also for clients that we work with. So when I work with a client, I look to resolve whatever the root of the issue is that's going on, but also equip them with tools for life that help them to continue to maintain and build on that resilience, to nourish and nurture themselves, so that, you know, once they leave the therapy space, the coaching space, they've got the tools they need to keep it going and keep going, because none of us are who we're going to be yet. Still learning and growing every single day. And that's, for me, that's the joy. That's what it's all about. And so making sure that we have those tools, those techniques, those skills that can keep us going, because life throws bad stuff at us. It gives us challenges. It gives us tough times. It gives us COVID when we really don't need it. We've got too much to do. But if we've got the resilience to it, then we can build ourselves back up. And it's, you know, it's not that false positivity, that toxic positivity where it's like, I'll just pretend everything's okay. It's, okay, this is bad. Okay, I'm not feeling great. So what do I need to do? What are those practices, those habits, those rituals that can start me on my way to feeling better again? And the protective measures that mean that when the stuff does hit you, it doesn't hit you as hard or for as long. It's that whole thing, resilience, isn't it? It's how quickly and how effectively you bounce back. Exactly.
Absolutely. Kate, you are speaking my language, and I'm just laughing while you're talking, because I literally say everything you said there, and it's so wonderful to hear it just spoken back to you. Like, you know, like this idea that this knowing we have about this work we do and why we do it, and the fact that you've just said it all back to me is so lovely. It's like a real full circle of knowing that this is what, you know, I should be doing too in these moments. And I love hearing that, because I'm like, yeah, I'm exactly saying exactly what you're saying. And you've been obviously doing this job a lot longer than I have, so it's always really nice to have that, just that connection there where we're just singing the same song, exactly the same lyrics, just in our own way, which is really nice. But I think on moving on from that, so that was everything you've just said is so important, and like I said, everything that I say as well. But obviously something I don't have as much expertise in at all is obviously the menopause. So I'd love for you to kind of give us a little walkthrough of the menopause in regards to, like, you know, the stages, and maybe some points that are key for people to maybe identify for themselves if they're going through it, and maybe some tips what they can do if they're in that space?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think the first thing I would say is that if your ladies are anything like me, they may be ignoring the menopause, thinking, well, it's not happening to me next, or yet even. And then the next thing you know, you're at that age and it's starting to happen. And so I think the thing that I would say is, firstly, is when you come from a place of good self-worth before you get to that life stage, that's super helpful. You've got a foundation. So but I think, you know, some of the things that are really important to understand is the whole range of different symptoms that we can experience. We generally know about hot flushes and you know, having difficulty finding words. I get that. And, you know, the sort of more common symptoms, but there are some uncommon symptoms that you could be experiencing that you don't know about. So one of the ones I didn't know about that I was actually experiencing for about 3 or 4 years was like dry, itchy skin. And it's almost like a creepy crawly walking on you and you're trying to itch it and it won't stop. So that's one of the ones. Aching joints can be a sign as well. So because estrogen cells, estrogen is kind of received by pretty much every cell in the body. That's why it can affect things like our mental health. It can create anxiety. We can get to a point where we lose belief in ourselves, and that self-worth is eroded further if we've not done the work on it in the first place, and we don't have those resilience practices in place. We can experience disruption with sleep. We can experience aches and pains, itchiness, dry skin, dry hair, vaginal dryness, and not wanting to have sex, which can create issues in your relationships. You know, we can experience differences in how our body shape changes, and understanding that. And, you know, all of these things and more can be managed and they can be worked with. It's not, oh, I've started menopause now, so I'm going to get really overweight and I'm not going to be able to string my sentences together, and my skin is going to go all dry and look wrinkly and horrible, and this is it, I'm done. You know, there are so many things that if we understand what's happening, we can be empowered to do things about it, like working with people like ourselves, like, you know, getting nutrition and fitness advice, like understanding how to holistically manage our mind and our body with what we eat, how we work out, how we keep ourselves in that good space with the habits and rituals. So there's that piece, and that's where the kind of the taboos come in, because while we're all kind of in corners going, shh, don't talk about it, we're not sharing our experiences, and the people around us aren't understanding those experiences, and they're not able to then appreciate kind of what the impact might be and how to support us, or to understand when perhaps we're on a bit of a short fuse because our hormones are out of whack and our temper's not quite as well managed as it might be, and those little things are driving us up the wall. So, you know, it's the talking about it is not only important from women supporting each other and from understanding if we are having symptoms that we maybe weren't aware of, but how to manage them, how to ask for help, how to speak to the people in our lives that we might need support and understanding from, and how to advocate for ourselves, because we know the healthcare system is overloaded. The other thing is that I don't know what the stats are today, but in 2021, only 41% of GP training courses, GP training placements, courses, practice actually included mandatory menopause training, and that was often around 1 hour of training. As I said, this is a 7 to 15 year life phase. So if we're talking about it, if we're stepping into our power of what it means to be a woman in this natural life phase, then we can advocate for ourselves much more effectively where there is a lack of understanding and insight from others. And that's not criticizing other people. It's a historical, cultural thing that, you know, that we have to start smashing down some of those barriers, smashing through those glass ceilings that, you know, result in women of a certain age, maybe leaving their jobs or taking a lower level job because they think they can't do it anymore. I heard one story about a really high flying executive, and she actually left her career because she thought she was getting early onset dementia. It was menopause. So, we have to inform ourselves. We have to get knowledgeable. We have to talk about this and bring it right out into the open, because it is natural. It is a life phase. We're all going to experience it to some degree. 51% of the population are going to experience it, and it can't be ignored. And we do have to advocate for ourselves, unfortunately. And that can be hard to do if you're experiencing self-doubt, because because of these hormonal changes, you don't feel like yourself anymore. Your body doesn't feel like your body. Your mind doesn't feel like your mind. And then trying to go in and advocate for yourself in work or in the GP surgery, or even with, friends and loved ones, can be really challenging.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I didn't want to stop you. I was like, keep going, keep going. Yeah, all of that. And what's really crazy is I made that connection about self-worth and the menopause not that long ago. So you've just reconfirmed that for me, which again is just a really nice full circle moment, because I absolutely, well, for me, my understanding of that would be that our baseline of however we feel about ourselves is amplified through that phase, because obviously our hormones are awry, everything is unpredictable. So I guess if your baseline isn't just contentment in who you are, again, or aligned with your self-worth, if you don't have those things there, like a bottom, you're just sinking, aren't you, constantly, and you're falling through these, I guess, perpetual cycles of feeling less than and judging yourself and all of these things. And it really is that. And I have read a few stories and articles as well about women, even getting sacked because they wasn't performing to the role that they was before, and there was no support for them. And it's just crazy to me that we have lived and existed so long in these formats where we're not celebrating women for this part of their lives, in tribal cultures especially. And if we look at paganism and like the more like spiritual holistic ways of doing it, like this is the crone phase, isn't it? Like this is all the wisdom and knowledge that you've gained throughout your life is now in the most heightened phase. Like this should be a time where we're coming to women to be like, tell us more about your life and your journey and like all of this experience. And imagine if we were doing that over just shaming them for being like, oh, she's going through menopause, she's a bit cranky. Do you know what I mean? Like, it's such a different approach, isn't it? And I think I feel like Davina DeCall made that it is Davina DeCall, isn't it? McCall, that's it. I was like, double dink, no. How funny. Yeah, she kind of did that program which kind of got everyone talking about it. So I think it was just, it's great that it's on the telly, and I think the more that obviously there's more resources available for women to understand it, but also men, everyone. I feel like we should be learning about this at school when we learn about periods and sex education, because again, that wasn't something that was taught in, even my mum's generation. She didn't have any sex education. No. And I probably had at my school probably about 6 weeks of learning about it, and that was it. And you think how much that plays in our life. But then we could talk about school and how we learn about things that don't matter, like algebra, and we don't learn about economics. So that's a different story, but yeah. It should be part of our existence, like you said, with the GPs and stuff. And what for me is so infuriating, I'm sure it's for you too, that if someone identifies with having mental health related issues and they go to their GP, the first thing the GP will do is try to prescribe them antidepressants. There is no other format. So it's either, suffer or take tablets. There's no other way for them to give guidance. And I understand it's because the NHS are overwhelmed, but this is where like my plea to whoever's listening is, whoever you speak to, if they're going through a tough time, send them over to us, because this is what we do. And we find other ways, holistic processes and all the things. We've got so many different, ways and modalities and tools that we can help you find that way for yourself, because there isn't a fix, is there? There isn't a quick fix to anyone's issues, anyone in the whole world. There's not just a paintbrush that you swipe over it and it's done. It's like, no, this is a practice and a process that you know, our work is about, like we said, giving you the tools to find it, and especially in a phase of menopause where you're at your most vulnerable, I would say, as a woman, you know.
Yeah. And actually, you know, the whole thing around not educating young girls and women about their bodies and how it works and what happens is leaving them vulnerable in so many ways. So, and just a point on the business side as well, you know, employers have a legal responsibility to make reasonable adjustments for women who are experiencing perimenopausal symptoms. So just from a position of being empowered with knowledge, there is a legal requirement there. And, you know, to be honest, organizations need to get themselves a bit more au fait with it. I mean, I work with organizations who do, I've done a series of little videos for them, little bite-sized videos about different aspects of it, from symptoms and symptom management to self-advocacy to leadership to reasonable adjustments, so that we're educating people in a way that can be used and helpful to them day to day. So, you know, absolutely go out there, read what you can, find out what you can, talk to friends about it, because it's so vital.
Absolutely. No, and thank you for sharing that as well in regards to, you know, your workplace's obligations there, because I don't think a lot of women even know that that's a thing, you know. And I think this is why it's so, for me, I always say knowledge is power. So the more we can know and understand, you know, the more power we have in a situation. Like, again, we feel helpless when we don't understand, or we feel that we're going through this difficult phase. And, you know, there's probably a lot of things and factors that are floating around your mind at the moment. But if you know that actually, you know, my workplace is obligated to give me this amount of days off during this time, then that takes some of your pressure off of you for feeling like you have to show up every day. You know, maybe you can arrange and negotiate that you work from home for a couple of months. You know, there's all of these different ways. And I think, again, maybe it's a confidence thing that comes with building self-worth and understanding, but my ethos always has been, if you don't ask, you'll never know. So I think there's always, instead of just, you know, thinking that that's it, it's done, you know, I have to leave, like, have a conversation and just see, you know, if you're in that space, for sure. But I guess, I mean, it's been amazing to speak to you about all of this stuff. I could speak to you for hours about everything, because I'm just so engrossed in you. Oh, thank you. But I guess for anyone listening, on anything we've spoken about today, what would be like 3 top tips that you think would be really helpful for just anyone listening right now?
So the first one is, if you're struggling with self-worth or self-esteem, go and get some help with that. It's fundamental. It's fundamental to you being the version of yourself that you're most happy with. So support, help, books, courses, therapists, coaches, whatever feels like the right way for you, go and get some help and start working on that as the foundation, as a beginning. And then, you know, start talking to other people about these things, because you saw, whether it's menopause or whether it's anxiety or whether it's low mood, or even, you know, for me, I was recently, very late in life, diagnosed with ADHD, and I'd been medicated for depression, as I said at the beginning, for years, when actually it wasn't that. It was Neuro Divergence. So when we talk to each other, when we share experiences, when we allow ourselves to be vulnerable in spaces we feel safe to be vulnerable, who knows what we might learn, who knows what we might figure out, and who knows what connections we might make to support each other. And then the other thing I would say is, the daily practices. This is not a do this bit or do this bit. It's about what small things. Self-care doesn't have to be huge, expensive whole weekends at a spa, or, you know, it's nothing if that's your thing and you want to do it. But some small daily practices around fitness, nutrition, mental well-being, and all those other little elements, even if it's reading a book for 10 minutes, if that's your thing, doing a 5-minute guided meditation, going for a 10-minute walk, you know, choosing a healthier lunch option, even though maybe you don't feel like it that day. Agree with yourself, you do it 2 days a week and start there. You know, every single little piece adds up. And we always talk about in therapy, anything more than nothing. What's the smallest thing you can do that would nudge you in the right direction. Do that, get that established, then add the next small thing. Because what we often try and do is turn our life around overnight, and then we wonder why we don't manage it, or we manage it for a few weeks and then it slips. And actually the research shows with creating habits that are sustainable, it's a little bit of time, add to it. You want to go to the gym, go for 5 minutes, do that for a week, then the next week go for 10 minutes. You know, you're not aiming to get muscular, fit, lean, whatever it is in 1 week. What you're doing is you're aiming to build life practices that will serve you in the long term.
No, you're speaking my language, Kate. Again, just it's like the words, ventriloquist. I was like, yes, in your beautiful, calm manner as well, not my Cockney accent. But yes, everything you said, I always say, and it's so important and vital. And I think we really are on the edge of people really understanding this on a deep level. I do believe that the science and lots of facts and things like that are going to come out in this next year about why this is so important. And I think that if you're listening to this now and you're thinking this is something you've been thinking about for a while, really do take that step forward now, because you know, from the first moment you take that step into whatever it is that you want to be, everything will conspire in your favor from that point. But unless you do it, you'll never know. You'll just be always thinking about it. So I do believe that, yeah, if this is something that is on the top of your mind, like, please do just, you know, book a call with one of us and just, yeah, have a chat at least to see if it's right for you, you know.
Absolutely.
But on that, where and how can people find you to work with you and all of the things?
Okay, so we are on Insta and Facebook. Now I've got to remember the handles for those because I'm rubbish with that.
I'll put them in the notes.
Origami Therapy Services and Origami Cognitive Hypnotherapy. And we are also on the web. So origami-life, as in LIF for Freddie, not live.com. And you can find us there, find out more about the team, what we do, how to get hold of us, that kind of thing. So yeah,
amazing.
Just find us there and ask us a question.
Yeah, and I'll pop all the links as well in the description, the show notes. So yeah, they'll be all there for sure, so people can find you and get you there. And a bit of a closing tradition or thing that I have is called it's a soul to soul message. Obviously, you know, I'm into spirituality and things like that. So I just feel like, based on the conversation, what would be kind of something your soul wants to share just in this moment?
I think it would be, take that first step into your power, and you never know who you could become. You just never know. You know, there are so many possibilities. You're not lost. You're just waiting to create the person that you're choosing to be. Take that first step, and then the others will come from there.
Yes, I love that so much. And it really, really is that. Thank you so much, Kate. You've been an absolute joy to have on. And I really hope the listeners benefit from it. And as always, if you're listening and you have any questions, obviously you can contact one of us, or, you know, write your feedback, whatever it is. But yeah, thank you so much, Kate.
So welcome. Thank you.